human speech. You've had that experience, I'm sure, that when you talk to a computer on the phone and you hear this computer voice, and you say, okay, well, that's convenient. Okay, yes, my name is so-so, give me selection number 2, or give me one. And then this voice says, please repeat, or it gives you the wrong information that you didn't ask for, and how rapidly you become annoyed and angry, and you say, and you yell, give me a human being, let me talk to somebody intelligent. Because when we hear a human voice, we expect human intelligence. So it's okay for people to interact with machines. As a matter of fact, we do this all day long. We push buttons, we use remote controls, we use keyboards and other forms of input. As soon as we use this and this as a combination, that entity has to perform just like a human being, otherwise they're out of the game. So we wanted to prove that theory. We wanted to observe if our suspicions were real. And we did a lot of research work by going into a multitude of environments, and what was absolutely a godsend for us is that we very quickly found that we had a perfect funding mechanism accessible to us, because our biggest fear was to say, let's get funding from the government, or let's get somebody from outside, a big company or a private individual to fund us. If we had accepted this money, and believe me, it was offered to us by the military as well, we would have been obligated to all these funding sources to make silly toys or weaponry or things, and we have nothing against all of these things, but we were in the field of communication robotics, and it was not necessarily a long-term multi-million-dollar business until very, very late in the game, where intelligent machines were truly capable of being intelligent machines, not just something in the research lab. So we had to figure out a way to sustain ourselves and at the same time to continue our research in more realistic environments than a lab, a clinic, or a hospital or something of the sort. So we said, wait a minute. Well, that's when we realized human beings, as they become adults, have all the same issues, and we need to help them to communicate as well, just like we're helping learning disabled people or special needs youngsters to communicate with their teachers, their therapists, their counselors. So why don't we help big corporations in the modern world to learn how to better communicate with their target audiences, just like you thought of elevating the table to make a housewife happy, so that in turn the husband would not say, I want to go home. That was an ingenious piece of foresight. And what we came up with is just the idea that in order for people to communicate better in the long term with corporations, they had to relearn what people's needs were under those layers of culture. So we realized that to communicate with a human being, you had to first bond with that person and befriend them, because commercialism had become so rampant that in the old days, when you and I were younger and our parents would shop, they would shop at a local store, and the owner of the store would say,
Mr. Coons at the corner store.
How are you doing? And I saw your daughter in the street yesterday. She had a little sniffle. Is she okay? And what do you need? I need a flashlight. Oh, here. There's a flashlight. He didn't have to say, this flashlight will throw a beam 1/4 of a mile away and the battery will last. You didn't care. You cared that you were getting the flashlight from somebody you had a relationship with. And if this flashlight didn't work, you bring it back and you get another flashlight. And it was simple as that. Then commercialism exploded, and advertising agencies and marketing geniuses came out on the market, and we figured out that if we hired a gorgeous woman and a handsome gentleman and made them look like they were holding the product, everybody would aspire to want to buy that product. And that worked quite well. Sex and aesthetics and everything was, to this day, is very closely associated. The problem is everybody is doing that. And what the problem is also is that everybody sings the praises of their product. In other words, our main focus, if I want to sell you a better camera, or a better video camera, or a better bottle of water, I am going to list all the essential attributes of that product, because I want to show you and teach you that my product is clearly better and has better attributes and performs better, faster, longer, stronger, less expensive, whatever. And I sell you this list of attributes. That brings on a second problem, is that we as consumers have learned that everybody in the universe is telling us and swearing up and down that their product is the best product in the world.
Yeah.
So the methods by which advertisers promote things to us today no longer is valid. It's strictly a game of numbers. In other words, how often I advertise that message is what makes you pay attention to me. And when you walk into the store, you're more likely to buy Coke than Pepsi, perhaps. But when you buy Coke instead of Pepsi, nothing inside your head is going, I'm buying Coke because it has this percentage of ingredient, that percentage. You're just buying Coke because you saw more ads than the Pepsi. But what if there was a way to tell you that Coke or Pepsi was good because you like the company? You know?
Right.
Then you would not have to spend as much money in advertising. You would just have to bond with your target audiences in a way that makes them say, I trust this company.
Right.
And that trust has gone away decades ago. You know, the bigger the company, the less you trust.
Right.
Because you say, well, they're such a huge company, all they want is to take my money and they really don't care after that. So what we did when we started this division called Techno Marketing is we uncovered an absolutely magical way to finance our ongoing research by making a lot of big corporations much more successful in how they communicate with people, because we were giving them a tool that could walk into a room of complete strangers and in a matter of seconds, using the same psychology we were employing with learning disabled children or people with emotional issues, we could just take these strangers and just become family with them.
Establish immediate rapport.
Right. The psychology was very similar to that of a child walking into a room and perhaps have never met you, the child has never met you, and the child may just yank on your sleeve and say, excuse me, sir, could I have that bottle of water over there? You know, and the child has clearly walked into this room and interrupted us, and it's socially unacceptable. But because of it, it's a child, and because we're compassionate human beings for the most part, we're going to make an effort to accommodate that child. And we're going to say, but of course, my love, of course it's up to you. Here's the bottle of water. Okay, have a good time. It's nice seeing you. And the child walks away. And then we go back to our serious business conversation. The robot is the child. You see?
Right.
We have an adult.
We don't put it in the same...
We have an adult that walks into the room, so he's already commanding the attention of the audience as an adult would. Because if he walks into a room as a child, we're going to go, oh, you're such a cute robot. But that robot can't talk about serious stuff because he is a child. So he has to be the child in terms of the psychology behind the principle, but he has to be an adult in terms of commanding our attention and respect and allowing us to be willing to communicate and listen and hear. So as the robot walks into the room, its stature reflects the stature of an adult. So our instinct and reflex is, we have to pay attention to this. You know, there's this...
It generates a level of confusion. And
Yes.
anytime we're confused, we have to think, we have to engage.
Exactly. What it is that the first step is a slight level of intimidation, and it's intentional in our design. So when these robots walk into a room, you know, you're a tall gentleman, you walk into a room and people go, okay, I'll listen to what this guy has to say. If you were just 2.5 feet tall, there's just not pay that much
I would come
attention.
across as a child.
Yeah. So the intimidation level is the first phase. Then the second phase is aesthetics and architecture and ergonomics. You just look at this and it doesn't look like a monstrous thing that's about to kill you, but still the intimidation which came about as a first reaction is still internal inside your heart and your mind, and you're just like, and then finally the robot speaks. And when it speaks, and this is the important in the final phase, instead of going like that telephone conversation, hello, yes, repeat, well, the robot is going to speak just like you and me and say, Lem, how's it going? How have you been? You look good today. Have you been exercising? You know, and it's a shock factor that immediately sets the tone for, oh, okay. Several things happen in your head at this moment. Not a human being, an adult, a little intimidating, I have to pay attention to it. It's an adult, I have to pay attention to it, and I can communicate with it on an intellectual level. And then finally, wait a minute, it's a machine, but it's not behaving like I would expect a machine to behave. It's behaving more like I would behave if I were in the presence of my closest friends or family members. Because in addition to being very human-like in the way the robot communicates, it is also a little bit more on the extroverted level, where it speaks to you by mimicking a lot of human idiosyncratic behavior, the type of idiosyncrasies that we tend to display when we are at our most comfortable selves, with our best friends. You know, where you're my best friend, I've known you for 10 years, let's just theorize, and when I'm in the room with you, I don't have to play games, because I know
all the shields go down.
Yes,
the communication
you accept me
is
as
direct,
my best friend.
the rapport
You
is
accept me.
immediate.
You know, I don't have to sell myself to you. You accept me for who I am, for what I am, and you respect my thoughts and my ideas. And if I tell you, you know what, I just bought a Volkswagen 2 weeks ago, and that's the best car in the world. You, as my friend, are going to say, "Well, that's interesting. You know, it's great." And maybe next time you need a car, you're going to remember that your friend told you about a Volkswagen, and you look into it. If I'm a stranger and I tell you, I just bought a Volkswagen and it's the best car in the world, you are saying, what is this guy selling me?
Yeah, what's he trying to do?
Yeah. So you see the difference. So we need, in a world designed for humans to communicate with each other and to each other and with one another, in a business environment, we as human beings know that everybody is trying to sell us something, an idea, a product, a service, or a thought, or a religious belief, a political belief, whatever it is. As a result of that, and as a result of this onslaught of messaging that is aimed at getting us to buy into something, we wake up in the morning and before we put on our clothes, we put on this shield that protects us from this onslaught of commercialism, because we know that everybody is going to try to get something out of us. And so everything that we hear and see from that moment on is like taken with a grain of salt. And the more people tell us about how fantastic their things are and their products and their ideas, you go,
the more resistant.
yeah, sure. And you take it, and you go, all right. You just make an allowance, or sometimes you'll argue that point or whatever.